Fit for Life Radio. We are here, episode number 76.
Are you sure about that?
This is our first one at our new podcasting room.
Our new studio.
Yeah, studio sounds a little too professional.
We should put those little foam things on the wall, and then it's a studio, right?
Yeah. Oh, the sound thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the sign outside the door.
That's what we need.
With that turns on. Yep. And as you hear, we have a guest today, Mr. Joe Roth, aka Joe Cool Runner.
Joe Cool, baby.
On Instagram, influencer. Is that right, Joe?
That's right. I'm excited to be here. Obviously, we've tried this a couple times, so I'm excited to be here.
This is our third attempt.
We had roadblocks and obstacles.
Roadblocks being getting knocked down by a COVID shot. So
here we are.
That's why I did mine on Thursday.
Oh, man.
And Joe is a client at Coastal Strength and Fitness. He's been there since January 2017.
4 years.
4 years. Over
4 years. Damn.
Mm-hmm.
So Joe's a runner, a gardener. He's a dad, husband. And he, trains with us as well. So he kind of does a lot.
How young are you, Joe?
55 years young.
55.
If you saw Joe, you wouldn't believe that.
It's like I've told you guys, I've been at Coastal now for 4 years. At this age, I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life right now.
Yeah, that was rad. One thing I wanted to make sure we touched on is, so for one, you started Coastal 4 years ago when you were 51, and then, before that, what were you doing? Where was your situation? Because you've made a lot of changes. I know like body composition's changed, your running performance has changed, and also your nutrition. A lot of change, right? And most people really after the age of like 30, they kind of pack it in and think that this is it. This is
as good as it gets.
Too hard. So you want to maybe talk about some of that a little?
Yeah, there's kind of that curve everybody goes through. You're young, you're active, you're doing stuff. You get married, you have kids. You're a father, you're a husband, doing things with kids all the time, and so you kind of back off on the physical piece a lot of times. And as the kids get older and you're getting older, you'll start realizing, oh man, you look at the old pictures and stuff, and you're like, man, I need to get back into things. And so, having been on active duty, I had to do the 1.5 mile run every year for the physical fitness test. So, I mean, I was running, but I was just running because I kind of had to pass the physical fitness test. It wasn't a passion. And while I was still on active duty, the base gym here at Langley, they had a gym class they called Fit Force.
Fit Force.
So that was at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. It was a morning class, and so you'll see a trend here with me in the mornings.
Yeah, Joe's a morning guy. Yeah. Just to preface everything, like he is the morning guy.
And so I was doing the Fit Force, which was great. It was 3 times a week. You went in, the instructor was there. They, here's the workout, and it was a lot of body weight stuff because it wasn't kind of using weights per se. Some kettlebell stuff and things like that. And we kind of like the 4:30 class now, or the old 5:30 class. There was a core 5 or 6 of us that became friends, and it was just one of those, you enjoyed being around them, with them, and doing the workouts and stuff. And then the base did away with those classes, and so I started going to the gym on my own at Langley. But it was so easy in the morning when the alarm would go off and you go, I'll go this afternoon. Yeah. You hit the alarm, you roll back in bed, because there was also nobody there holding you accountable.
You.
Yeah, and there was no kind of group there of, oh man, I know I'm tired. I can, but I want to go be with that group. So
yeah, it makes a big difference. I talk with a lot of new people inquiring about the gym, about how it's class-based. And that's a huge difference from a regular gym where you can say, I'm going to the gym today, but it's super open-ended and it's easy to find stuff to get in the way. Whereas if you're like, well, you've reserved a time slot, that there's coaches and other people that are expecting to see you. It's just a whole nother layer of accountability.
And back then, again, it was a good class, but it was the class. I showed up for the class. I did the class, went home, went to work after that. But there was no other pieces and parts of the system that what I'll say I've kind of built as a system over time, especially coming through working with Coastal. And so the class went away, and I was trying to do things on my own. I went to another person I knew at another gym that does a lot of just personal training. And I was looking for that class atmosphere. The gym used to do classes and stuff, and I was recommended, hey, go check out Coastal. And they told me where Coastal was at the time, and I'm going, I drive by that shopping center. It's literally around the corner from me. There's no gym there, So the one day I put it in the GPS, and I pull into the parking lot there, and I'm like, and I see the sign about jazzercise, whatever, and I'm like, what? And so I kind of slowly creep up to the door, and I'm like kind of looking in, and it was a class that Ben was teaching, Ben and Kristen and stuff. And at first I looked in, and I went, oh crap, this is CrossFit. That was my first kind of thought, because I also had tried a CrossFit gym one time for like that 1 week trial period, and I talked to Ben for a little while, and then I was like, okay, I asked him some of the questions about the workouts and things, and so I was like, hey, I'm going to Disney, going to run the Dopey Challenge at Disney. Don't want to start now, but when I get back, I'll want to start at the gym, and so that's kind of how I
ended up with us.
Ended up with Coastal.
Yeah. Stumbled into our jazzercise parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So at that time, the Dopey Challenge, what was that, like a marathon or
so it's
half marathon?
It's a Thursday 5K, Friday it's a 10K, Saturday's a half marathon, and Sunday is a full marathon. So
which one did you do?
All four.
Okay.
So you do all four.
Oh, so the challenge is all four of them.
All four in 4 days. And
the challenge for me is packing my suitcase.
Exactly.
Get on a flight.
So as you were saying, Joe's a morning person. So, those races start at like 5:30 in the morning. So you're up at like 3 to catch the bus to get to the start line.
I think you're still delirious by the time you run, so you don't realize what you're doing.
So, and the reason I started at Coastal also was I was starting to kind of really get that passion for running. And, one of the pieces was working on my strength, especially my leg strength, to help me with the running. So that's kind of what part of the original motivation coming into Coastal was.
Yeah. And one thing you've said before, so kind of, and you weren't a big guy, when you started, or overweight per se or anything, but you've lost 25 pounds. So kind of as a runner, a lot of times, so running is a great sport. The tough part is, one of the great things about running is a super low barrier to entry. You can just slap on some shoes, step outside and do it.
Yep.
But I always find it, ironic's probably not the right word, but a lot of people are scared to go to the gym, right? They think I need to get in shape before I go do something, say like Coastal or whatever. But I've always found, in reality, running is a sport where you want to kind of have, maybe quote unquote get into shape, in that you have to remember it's essentially a body weight based sport. You're moving your body from point A to point B. So if someone's, say, overweight or obese, they're going to be able to improve their running much more in the beginning by losing weight versus doing a ton of running, because more running is going to be more pounding on their joints. Yep. and then their form is going to have to compensate. So talk about, and you got it probably double whammy, right? As far as good things happening from, you started losing body fat, you started gaining muscle and strength, right? So now your body's becoming much more efficient, which is going to improve your running. So kind of describe how that felt, or the process.
Yeah, so you were describing there, when I started the gym, I had really no intentions of coming to the gym to lose weight per se. It was more about building leg strength to help facilitate my running and be less injury prone while I was running, because prior to that my IT band was always acting up on me, and so it was more about working on my strength. And so over time at the gym, when I first got in there, the 5:30 class, we call ourselves the 5:30 boys. There were 5 of us.
The squad.
The squad. I mean, we each, kind of had our one lift that we're probably better than the other at, or a little bit stronger, but we're just constantly pushing each other and challenging each other. And at that time, I thought, strength. I got to deadlift 450 pounds, And then over time, I was like, that's great, but if I really want to get into this more long endurance running,
Does it match up?
Yeah.
doesn't match up. And so over time, I've adjusted what I do at the gym of, okay, I don't need to do that super heavy max 1 rep, whatever.
Because to chase that, you're going to sacrifice your running.
Yes.
Right. And so I backed off. And so I work with Ben all the time in the mornings about when I look at the board and stuff going, hey, here's what I got going on for the weekend or what I just came off of the weekend. Here's how can we adjust this? Or, hey, I'm not going to go heavy today. I'm going to go light or vice versa. So, over time, kind of the weight loss, again, was not a priority. It was just a
side effect.
A side effect of strength training, going back to the system, listening to your podcasts, frozen vegetables. I'll throw out frozen vegetables because I don't know, podcast 20 something, whatever you guys were talking about frozen vegetables.
Yeah, that
was
one
of those things that hit me was like, they're right, because my wife would go to the grocery store, she'll buy some fresh vegetables, throw them in the bin, and all of a sudden things happen. You don't eat the vegetables for a couple of days. Next thing you know, you open up the drawer and
you're throwing away sad carrots.
Whereas the frozen vegetables, if I go do the group run on Wednesday nights or yoga on Tuesday nights, when I get done, I can pull out those frozen vegetables out of the bag, throw them in the microwave or somewhere else, and they taste just as good, if not better. And it's available. It's not there's nothing else here to eat or do. So, so learning things through the podcast, listening to you guys, and not always just grabbing everything that came out of one podcast, but it's little bits and pieces.
Oh, yeah.
Brussels sprouts 4 years ago,
Yeah.
I never would even consider eating a Brussels sprout. Now it's like, holy cow, these things are really good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You're the perfect example of a lot of times at the gym we do deep dive one-on-one consultations and nutrition coaching and super accountability, whereas you've always, for the most part, you show up pretty consistently, and then you never dug in, I don't think, with any of us real specific with nutrition, but you kind of listen to all the podcasts and just take the information and apply stuff. And that's what we always say, like whether the stuff we post on Instagram, the podcast, all the free content, all the quote unquote answers are literally all there. Most people, it's not that's missing.
It's not the information.
You can get the information anywhere for free. It's being able to apply it. And then there's some people need different levels of accountability for the application. But with you would always tell me each week, oh, I've been applying, something from the podcast.
Always.
It's always little bits and pieces, So out of that 40-minute podcast, frozen vegetables, out of 40 minutes, the only thing that struck to me was frozen vegetables.
Yeah, but it's different. It's a difference maker.
Yeah. Yeah, it's made a huge difference. And you were mentioning something there that struck a note with me too.
With the podcast or the not needing, kind of being consistent with your actions.
So yes, I've not sat down with you or Will or Diego or anybody and tore through my diet and everything else. But listening to the podcast and talking about those little things, you've talked about clients who think, well, I'm only eating X. And then when you sit down, you break it apart, you realize there's something during that day that they're doing that they just didn't even realize.
Yeah.
And I kind of did that too. So early on, I was kind of you got to eat throughout the day kind of grace to keep everything calm.
The old 1980s.
Fired up.
Yeah.
And
so I'd have 10 o'clock in the morning, I'd have a banana, and then 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'd have a Greek yogurt, And then one day I'm like, let me try something. So I cut both of those out and realized it really didn't make a difference for me.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm okay. And then sometime later, so that's whatever a banana is for calories, and then Greek yogurt. So those are that many calories less out of my diet. And then 2 years ago now, I was going to New Zealand to run a marathon with my neighbor, and I was shopping and buying some clothes, and all of a sudden I put on some pants. I told my wife to, grab the normal waist size that I usually wear, and I put them on, and I was like, these don't fit. And then I went down to the size that I probably wore 15, 20 years ago, and I'm like, well, this is odd.
Yeah.
And then that's when I realized that over time, just not because I set out to do it, but because of the changes and things that I implemented, that maybe not consciously realized that, hey, if I do this, this is going to help me lose weight. I just made changes in my diet and nutrition, consistently running, consistently coming to the gym and strength training that just over, say, it was really about a 2-year period again. So this wasn't the hey, I lost 10 pounds
I
in a
have
month.
6-week challenge.
Yeah, I all of a sudden woke up one day and realized that through all these changes between diet, consistently going to the gym, running, and things like that, and sleep, that all of a sudden 2 years later, I'm 20, 25 pounds lighter.
Yeah. It's a result of your habits. It's not, and then it's super sustainable because it's habits that you were living gradually kind of grew into.
And I think you guys talked about it in the last podcast too. It's not the keto diet or you can only eat this specific food every day, because that's not sustainable. But what I've created is a sustainable process for myself, again, between frozen vegetables. I don't meal prep per se, but you guys have talked about rice, and so I cook rice ahead of time, put it in the Tupperware, and again, with those frozen vegetables, after I come home from the group run, I can throw rice in a pan with those frozen vegetables, some other spices, whatever, cook, heat it up, and now I've got, with some protein, and I've got this awesome meal.
That was easy.
That was easy versus stopping at Chick-fil-A or Burger King or somewhere else on the way home and getting some French fries and other stuff. And it's nutritious, and it supports what I'm
And just
trying
so
to
the
do.
listeners know, Joe just mentioned eating rice, and he lost 25 pounds and has 6-pack abs, right?
You can eat rice.
And the great thing too, this is why I love when people have like a hobby that's like running or something performance based, is that naturally makes you want to make better food choices, because you'll kind of compare to how certain things feel and relate to your performance, right? A lot of times when people are fine eating a bunch of junk food, you can kind of get by, but it affects your workouts, right? So then you start making better choices because you'll feel the difference in your performance and everything.
Well, my last name doesn't show it, but my mom was 100% Italian. I grew up in an Italian family, and my grandfather would always be like, second, third bowls of pasta. I grew up on eating pasta, and there's the old cliche that for like a marathon, you got to carb load the night before. Yeah. What I have found actually is it doesn't work for me.
Yeah,
I go to bed with a gut in my, my stomach just feels loaded. Yeah. I wake up in the morning, I don't feel good. But I've kind of switched to rice. I actually feel like rice helps me.
Well, because it's so easy to digest, and it's not going to be heavy, and it's basically like pure starch, So that probably is better than pasta or really anything else.
And pasta is going to be easier to eat a ton more because it's flour. It's made from flour, right? Whereas rice is still somewhat, even if it's white rice, which the bran is processed off, but it's still the whole form.
And I'm mixing the rice with vegetables and other protein and stuff. It's not just,
and that's the other thing. So when you take
rice by itself,
even pasta, and it gets a bad rap. Well, also most people if you just sit there and eat a bunch of pasta, and there's no protein with it, right? So it's taking the whole picture into effect. But now let's also pivot a little. So a lot of the roadblocks and obstacles we see when people embark on running is injuries, So talk about now, first of all, maybe talk about a little bit how much you do run now, so that people can really grasp that, like, you are able to do a lot of running and be pain-free and avoid injuries and stuff.
And recover really well.
Yeah, and so, I was mentioning when I started at Coastal, my IT band would act up on me quite a bit. And so I wanted to get stronger and try to prevent the IT band from flaring up on me. So back then, before I started Coastal, I'd have to go back and look now, it was probably 500 miles maybe in a year total, which I thought was a lot. And for me at that time, it was a lot. So over time, every year, I've increased my yearly mileage. And so last year, I think it was about 1,220, 1,200 miles is what I did. Now, in the running group I'm part of, that's probably more like middle of the road. Actually, there was one woman that lives in my neighborhood. She did 3,000 miles last year. But I've done 1,200 miles. and I won't say I'm injury free. I mean, there's little
Yeah,
nicks
there's gonna
here
be,
and there,
but nothing that then prevents you from running, right?
no. And so I've increased, doubled my running mileage annually since I've been going to the gym, decreased rates
Mhm.
of injuries and things, and I feel stronger, and I'm running longer distances at a time now too. It's not just 3 miles every day or
Yeah.
something, but I can run longer distances, and so I guess the ultra distances is where my passion is now.
Yeah.
It's
Could you imagine strapping on a 25-pound book bag and having it,
so I think about that
Yeah.
actually sometimes
Just
when
to
I'm out
see,
there
yeah.
there running, is that and I think you guys have talked about this in the podcast, when people lose a lot of weight and then you pick up like a 25-pound
Yeah.
plate and you
Like you had
realize,
this.
yeah,
Yeah.
you were carrying that around, and so that's probably also helped me facilitate my running and going
Mhm.
longer distances and less injury free.
Absolutely.
Is that although I felt good, I felt strong 4 years ago when I
Mhm.
started at Coastal, cutting 25 pounds, I do feel stronger. I feel leaner. I feel more flexible.
Mhm.
And doing all the yoga and stuff at the gym.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
feel like I was telling Jillian yesterday after yoga, I said, the interesting thing is, at this point, at my age, not only do I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life, but I feel like I'm more capable of doing things that I want to. So when I was 25, I can't bench what I bench pressed
Mhm.
when I was 25 years old.
Yeah.
None of us can.
But what I can do today are things that I would not have even contemplated, or I don't think even mentally I would
Mhm.
have, even though I was probably
Physically
physically able
capable,
to do
yeah.
it, I could
Yeah.
not have done what I'm
Yeah.
doing now, that I'm able to do today at
Mhm.
this age, that between the strength training and all the other pieces and parts that have all come together, that, it's just, and we were talking earlier before we started here, you can hear me now, I'm getting passionate about running and,
Mhm.
Oh
and
yeah.
that stuff there. So, yeah, I mean, I just, today I look in the mirror and I'm going, holy crap.
Yeah.
It's just where in the 4 years even coming to Coastal, where I've taken myself again
Mhm.
because of podcasts and just the people I'm around and everything else.
Mhm.
I've built this system around me that has just
Yeah.
elevated,
It's
that
a
I
community.
never, if you had come to me and said, Joe, in 4 years, this is what you're going to be doing
Mhm.
and what you're going to be like, I would have laughed at you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
And
like,
think
there's
about
no
even
way.
for your mental health, right? And just most of the time as we age, it's the opposite. We cocoon up, right? We're like we stop doing new things. And then you get sad and miserable. Whereas you create, I mean, that's the beauty of something like a gym like Coastal and your running community is you have these little communities and outlets and things like that.
Oh, no, I mean, and I think that's the other piece that I've noticed too is, I've always been an introvert for the most part, but as I've gone to the gym and I've done all the running and everything
Mhm.
else, I've actually become more of an extrovert.
Yeah.
I mean, 4 or 5 years ago, I probably would have sat here and gone, podcast, no, I don't.
Nah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
When you guys asked me to come on the podcast, I'm like, awesome, let's go
Yeah.
talk about
Let me
running.
share this.
Let's talk about what I've learned and
Mhm.
what I've put together that could help other people.
So one thing, tell me what you think about this. So I've talked about this before with the coaches. So one thing about Coastal I've noticed, and because I'm naturally an introvert as well, and
Same.
I've noticed we get a lot of introverts in this group training, right? And I've always thought about, I think that's because we can read people well and tell, like maybe people who want to be talked to and engaged with in a certain way, and then
Mm-hmm.
people who are literally you can check in with them and they don't want to, maybe
Yeah, they're
engage too
good.
much, and we can recognize that.
Yeah.
And we're also not that this is wrong, it's just I think there is a place in the market for it. Most gyms, most fitness trainers, most programs, you think of that like real, Jillian Michaels, Biggest
In your
Loser,
face.
in your face,
Yelling,
with the
screaming.
headphones on, yelling, screaming, trying to like call you out, and you're just like, I don't want to be noticed. Whereas our approach is actually more. It's group training, but we typically address people in individual fashion. We get to know you,
Yes.
and we're just kind of coaching you more on an individual level, right? Because say we had headphones on
And we're screaming at
and
people.
we're screaming, and then we have to ask you or tell you something, Joe, like, hey, fix that lower back on that. Now all of a sudden you feel
in the spotlight.
In a weird
everybody's looking at
situation.
you
Yeah,
like,
so
"Ooh, am I doing this right?
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I've only got 25 pounds here."
And I
Everybody's
think
like,
a lot of
and then you're
it's
uncomfortable, and you
Yeah.
don't want to be a place you're uncomfortable
because
at.
none of us want that either.
Yeah.
Like we're all pretty introverted and like, dude, I don't want the spotlight on me. Like,
Yep.
I mean, I do enjoy the spotlight a little bit, but like, you know, when I'm working out, like I don't want to be called out, man. Like that's
Yeah.
probably the worst thing in the world. So
Yeah.
I recognize that most people, especially, you know, people come to the gym because, you know, they want to be better, they want to lose weight, or they want to feel better about themselves. So in a place like that, calling somebody out or putting the spotlight on them is generally what people don't want. So, you know, creating that environment where they feel welcome and like, you know, I'm going to be coached and I'm going to be taken care of, but you know, I'm not going to feel
Yeah.
like I'm being, you know, ridiculed or put in the spotlight or talked down on or anything like that.
And I think the way we have it set up, where there's usually like 3 stations, allows everybody to kind of be
Disperse.
Yes.
doing their own thing over in the corner, that everybody's not doing the same thing, all looking at each other,
Oh,
going,
yeah.
okay, what are they lifting? And, you
Yeah.
know, in the mornings with Ben, you know, Ben does a great job of just very quietly walking around and just kind of walking up to you going, hey, how's it going? You know, hey, just work on this, you know, hey, just adjust this a little bit. And so again, he's not that, hey, you get it, you know,
Yeah.
he's just sort
Tighten
of,
up, Joe.
yeah, you know, he's just sort of, you know, hey, nudging you along, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, yeah, I can fix this. over here.
Exactly. And I think we've just found that's an effective way to coach.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just a personal thing. And,
You could even probably say it's probably even better than one-on-one, right? Because then one-on-one, you have someone with you every second, and you're probably like,
Yeah.
Whereas,
leave
you
me
know,
alone.
here you can kind of, you know, you get just enough attention.
yeah,
but
you get
yeah.
you get the touch and you get the attention, but that attention's always going to be, you know, wandering to other people that need it. So you get, I think, just enough in that situation.
Yeah. So about your running, how much do you? I'm curious about. So we'll lay a baseline for people. So most people that come to Coastal or in strength training in general, especially if you have a hobby like running, you can't spend all your time strength training.
Nope.
But so a good baseline would be like 3 hours a week, 3 sessions a week. And for a lot of people, that's the commitment. That's all they have, right? Now you have more time. So for you, especially now your kids are grown, and you spend a lot of extra time with your sport of running. What does that look like for you?
Yeah.
And do you run alone most of the time? How much do you run with the running group? How's that look?
So it's a balance in priorities. You know, maybe part of the reason I've been able to ramp up is my youngest graduated from college 2 years ago. So, you know, before following my kids around for college sports and stuff, you know, there was a kind of a limiter there of, hey, you know, I don't have that much time.
Yeah, you had
between
other
work and everything else.
priorities.
And now that they're all graduated and everything, it's like, okay, I can really focus in on this. So, you know, I'll run through like my typical week. So yeah, where I used to do some of the Tuesday, Thursday workouts at the gym, I did SmackDown, and then I started, you know, I would do SmackDown. Then I started doing yoga, and I was doing some SmackDown yoga.
If you know me, you know I'm always on the run, up early and home late, so having a 3-hour morning routine isn't really in the cards for me. What is in the cards is AG1. It's a fast way to get vitamins and minerals I need to perform. I first gave AG1 a try because I wanted a single solution that helps support my entire body by filling in nutrient gaps and simplifying my morning routine. Since drinking AG1 daily, I've always felt strong and energized and ready to attack the day. Not only does AG1 deliver my daily dose of vitamins, minerals, pre- and probiotics, and more, it's a powerful, healthy habit that's also powerfully simple. It's 1 scoop mixed in water once a day and every day. I know that AG1 is giving my body high-quality nutrition. Every batch of AG1 goes through a rigorous testing process, so you know that it's safe. And AG1 ingredients are sourced for absorption, potency, and nutrition density. AG1 is a supplement that I trust to provide the support my body needs daily, and that's why I'm excited to welcome them as a new partner. Here is your chance to start every day this season with a gift to yourself. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase exclusively at drinkag1.com/provengrit. That's drinkag1.com/provengrit. Check it out.
I do the Monday, Wednesday, Friday consistently in the gym. I don't do Tuesday, Thursday because I'm
Because
doing
you have
that
your
aerobic piece
conditioning component from your running.
on
Yeah.
the side. Saturday mornings, I I used to try to do SmackDown and then yoga, but I just didn't like that feeling coming off of SmackDown going into yoga.
Yeah.
So
Oh
I
yeah,
just
it's brutal,
100%
man.
Yeah.
yoga on Saturday mornings. And then usually Tuesday mornings, I'm part of we call it Track Tuesday because we used to go over to the CNU track and do speed work on Tuesday mornings when CNU was open pre-COVID. Wednesday mornings after class, I'll usually go out and run 3, 4, 5 miles. And then there's a Wednesday night group run over at Tradition Brewery that's part of a flat out events type event. I run with that group there. It's a great, motivator to be there with all those other people.
Yeah. And that's like every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday evening.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
cool.
Thursday morning, we haven't talked about like rest and recovery and things like that too, but Thursday's my, no kidding, you guys have talked about this too, you can't go 7 days a week.
Nah.
You got to give your body. So Thursday is definitely I do nothing. I sleep in, get that solid 8 hours of sleep. And it's amazing. I've talked to Ben about this. Everybody talked about recovery and stuff, but it's amazing how much just a good solid 8 hours of sleep
Oh yeah.
does. I mean, you go from, man, I am just completely worn out to you get a solid 8 hours of sleep. You wake up, you feel completely refreshed, and it's amazing. It's the one thing too, as I've gotten older, that I've realized is sleep. My very first assignment in the Air Force, I was at Wurtsmith Air Force Base on Lake Huron they called it the sunrise side. And at that age, your early 20s are kind of like, who wants to get up early?
Yeah.
It's the man burn through the night, go to bed as the sun's rising and sleep. And then as I've gotten older, it's like, no, I want to be up early with the sun
For that
rising.
sunrise.
And for me, it's actually energizing, to rise with the sun. And then, it's like, I'll go to bed early and get up early. So kind of diverted there a little. My kids always laugh at me because my stories never go in a straight line.
That's fine.
So Saturday morning, consistent yoga with Jillian. I think the yoga, helps a lot with the stretching and just recovery. And it's just, it's relaxing. There's a relaxation piece there for me that just, I think helps just kind of bring everything down.
Yeah.
And so on Tuesday afternoon, I forgot Tuesday evening too, I do an online yoga session too. So I got yoga twice a week, the gym 3 days a week in terms of strength training, and then yoga twice a week. And Tuesday morning group run, usually run on Wednesday morning, Wednesday evening, definitely Wednesday evening, run Friday morning after gym. I haven't done it in a little while now, but usually I used to do maybe go run 3 miles before yoga. So it wasn't a hard pounding smackdown, but it was just an easy run, warm up.
Kind of aerobic.
Yeah. Before I got into yoga, and then Sundays is my long run.
So what is a long run? Like how far is that for you? On average, maybe.
So it depends on what I'm training for. Right now I'm training for a 50-mile race in June out in Damascus. So it could be upwards of 4 hours, 13 miles. It just depends on where I am in the training program.
Figured.
And so most of the training programs I follow is usually go long, and then the next weekend bring it back to like 8 miles. So 8 miles would be a consistent average long run on the weekends, but every other weekend would go longer and a progressively longer weekend.
I got it. So you run, what is that? 3, maybe 4 days a week?
Yeah.
Is that what it comes out to? So you don't run 7 days a week?
No, and I've experimented over time. In the running group I'm part of, I see people, they've got their run every day kind of things and or high mileage, and I'm like, man, I want to be like them. And I've learned over time that every person's body is built differently. And I've talked with my son about it. My body is not necessarily genetically probably necessarily a long distance runner type body, more of a sprinter type person. So I've had to train my body, but my body also I've discovered is not a and there are some people that can go out and run every day and
Yeah.
they're okay. I've tried it, and after about 3 weeks, my legs and body just say, dude, I'm done.
Stop this.
And so what I have found is that, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, longer distances, 3 or 4 times a week actually works better for me than trying to go out every day and run.
Yeah.
It's just, that's what works for me.
Yeah.
The other 2 pieces that I don't follow anything like strictly, this is how I run, but incorporating run walk. The very first marathon I trained for was Disney. Disney's tied in with Jeff Galloway, and he's real big about run walk, and I pulled out his training plan. And he talked about the run walk, and I started doing run walk. Matter of fact, when I first really started getting into running, my neighbor and I used to run together, and he would stop every so often and get some water or whatever. And I'd be like, dude, we're running. Come on, what do you mean?
You gotta keep going.
You gotta keep going. And now we're like the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm, run walk like a 4:01 or a 4:30, and he kind of continues to, run straight through stuff. So run walk, low heart rate. Zone 2. When I was training for the New Zealand Marathon, I had on the Rich Roll podcast, I heard him talk about Zone 2 training, low heart rate.
Have you heard of like the Maffetone method?
And that's the other piece I've been following too. I was like, that sounds interesting. And so I used to, when I did my long runs, I trained based on pace. It's like, okay, this is the pace I want to go out and run.
And you had to keep that pace the whole time, basically.
Yeah. And I would get towards the end of the run and it'd be like, man, I am just freaking hurting. Yeah. And then I would finish with the run and I'd be like, oh, that hurt. And then I actually finally did some research on Zone 2, low heart rate and stuff. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So even prior to that, it sort of just went, okay, I got to keep a lower heart rate. And what I started discovering on the long runs with the run, between the combination of the run walk and the low heart rate, Zone 2 training, I'd come in the gym on Monday mornings after running along on Sunday, like a 20-mile run. And I tell Ben, I stopped at 20 because that's what the plan said, but I probably could have kept going. But the plan said stop at 20. And then that Monday I woke up feeling okay. I wasn't like, oh man.
You weren't wrecked.
Yeah, I wasn't wrecked. And so I discovered the Maffetone method. I don't follow, again, that to the letter. I read 2 of his books talking about diet and nutrition. Do the 180 minus your age, plus or minus depending on, he's got a couple formulas in there that says, hey, if you've just started running, then subtract this. If you've been doing this for 3 years and no injuries, you can add 5. And so that's where I stay is with what my math number is for my long runs. And then, the 80-20 kind of theory is that 80% of your runs are slow. Yeah,
aerobic based.
And then 20%. So that's where my Tuesday morning track Tuesday comes. And I use that as my, I'm going to go do speed work, my anaerobic piece, and everything else. You guys on that group run, you can take off and go do your 7-minute miles. I'm happy here at my 9-10.
I think that's something that when people start out running, we mentioned how running is so accessible and you can just go out and do it. But I think people, especially maybe when they do it because they think they need to do it to lose weight or whatever, they go out and instead of 80-20, it might be 20-80,
or it's really 100.
100, so 100-0. Like every run destroys them. And I think people feel like they have to do that. So I think it's important to hear somebody who, runs like you do, is in the shape that you do and has the balance that you do, to tell people that like 80% of my runs, like I'm just straight aerobic. Like my heart rate is not, I can't feel it in my temples or anything. Because that's where you should exist with something like that.
And let me explain for the listeners so they kind of have a better idea of what's going on. This is what people don't understand. So you'll watch someone run or see someone run, and your perception of their effort is then what people try to mimic or think they have to do. But what's the Maffetone method and what's going on is, and when you see these Olympic level runners, right, and they're able to push this crazy pace.
Bro, they are cruising.
You have to understand, though, their heart rate is right on the threshold of the aerobic, anaerobic. And once you go anaerobic, So when you're aerobic, your body's kind of able to turn over oxygen, right? And you can fuel it through you can get enough oxygen. When you go anaerobic, that's when you start getting the burn and you're gasping and your body has to start using carbohydrates for energy. Well, then eventually you're going to run out of carbohydrates too, so you kind of have to refuel. But those people, their aerobic fitness, and a lot of at the elite level, as with any elite sport, there's a genetic component.
For sure.
So their genetic component and their hardworking component, but they're able to perform at a faster pace while staying more aerobic. So if you just start out and you're, out of shape and don't have a huge aerobic base, maybe you did not play soccer or something when you were a kid, because if you did, that's 15 years to build an aerobic base, right? Then you may just be you could be walking, right? If you're obese, you could be walking and get into an anaerobic range, right? So what you really have to do is find that the top end of your aerobic range and stay there. And for one person, that could be walking. For one person, it could be a slight jog. For one person, it could be running at a 6-minute mile pace. But you have to respect that your fitness levels, and then take the time to build your aerobic fitness, which then is actually going to improve your race day, because you'll be able to push harder as well.
And I think you mentioned there the process, and I think people hear the term run, I'm going to go run, so they literally think I've got to run.
And I got to get after it.
Or people hear the term jog. Well, joggers aren't runners.
Yeah.
And I think you hit on an important point there. Again, it's taken me over 4 years to get where I am. I didn't just go out and go, zone 2, boom, I'm out running 20 miles.
Yeah, you've refined this over years.
Yeah, and so I think that's what happens a lot of times. People think, I got to go run to lose weight, and they literally go out the door and they just take off running.
And then they want to feel fatigued, and if I feel fatigued, I did more.
Yes.
That must be more effective.
And it hurts while they're running. They get back and they're like, man, I am so sore, versus starting slow and working their way up over time. And then as they're working their way up over time, they're losing weight. And so, there's kind of hey, my aerobic base will start building and my weight will start coming down, and then you'll meet somewhere, and then the two will pass, and all of a sudden you're in another area. But I think a lot of times people just, I got to lose weight, so I'm going to start running. And they just take off literally running versus what's the right pace.
Intensity.
Yeah, what's the right intensity for me?
What's the right distance? My neighbor, a number of years ago, a different neighbor, there's some apps out there, Couch to 5K.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And it literally talks you through it as it'll tell you, okay, jog. And then it'll say walk. And so it's not just go out and try to run.
Yeah, no.
Jog for 3 miles and call it good.
And every day you try to beat your time.
It's a slow
progression.
progression.
It's progression, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty. That's the hard part with running. It's not. Strength training has natural progression, right? Like you go to do a dumbbell bench press, you grab 15s, you can do it for 10. Let me do a little more weight. And then that weight, you can only get 6. So it's kind of built in, right? Yeah. Well, now I've got to keep using these till I can do them for more. Whereas running, it's harder to gauge, right? Because you can push beyond. There's not like weights you're selecting. So really it takes some due diligence to learn kind of these intensities and everything. The other benefit where someone like you, and a lot of the running you're doing is in your aerobic range, which is actually, so the problem, whether you do running or HIIT or anything, if you do tons of high intensity all the time, it's very stressful for your body, which is going to cause problems, because the more stress you cause, the more recovery you're going to need. And then most people, they don't have the recovery down, which is your nutrition and your sleep. So keeping it in an aerobic base can actually help facilitate recovery. So it's like you could look at one person who's like, I run 10 hours a week. You could have another person who says, I run 10 hours a week. But how you're running is going to be two different things and going to cause different outcomes, especially with weight loss and things like that. So, it's kind of respecting intensity, and it's an ego thing too, right? It's I did it when I was out in California. I felt like obligated to be outside more. So it's like, I'm going to start running.
I remember when you
did that. And I did the Maffetone method. And it's very hard because you're literally going at a lower intensity and stopping yourself from going further. But you feel refreshed when you're done. Over time, you notice progression. All of a sudden, if you're able to keep it aerobic, so say I'm staying at like 140, and then I make it 3 miles, right? And it takes me whatever 30 minutes, and then over time you start getting faster.
Yeah.
But your actual heart rate is staying the same, which means you're getting in better shape.
That's the piece that doesn't make sense to a lot of people, is that if I go slow, I'm not going to get faster.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, a lot of the studies have actually shown that yes.
Mm-hmm. And this is too, you made a good point before, to where you have to you can't compare yourself with others.
No.
And I wanted to make this point too, like you're a perfect example. There's points in your life you could not give all that you have to the sport of running that you can now because of other life responsibilities. Yeah. So if someone's like, well, I'm going to go be like Joe, but you might not have the time, or you might not be ready for that. Same thing, with like your intensity and stuff. If someone, played soccer from the time they were 5 to 18, they're building now. They're just playing a sport and having fun, but they're building an insane aerobic base. So then if you're someone who just maybe did not play sports as a kid, and now you pick up running, and you also pick up running at the same time as your buddy who just happened to be a soccer player for 20 years, and then maybe they're a little better at it than you, and then you could get frustrated and be like, I got to go harder. But the reality is that you're two different people with different experiences and factors that play a big role.
Yeah, the group runs are an example. You take off, and as nobody runs as the group, but you all kind of usually leave at the same time. And there's those that just freaking take off, and you're kind of like, huh.
Yeah. Should I be going that fast?
Fast?
Yeah.
But then you remind yourself, no.
Yeah, I'm not that person.
You're not that person. This is your training regimen. This is what you do, what best is for you. And if they want to run a 7-minute mile, great. If you're doing a 9 or 10, you're doing 9 or 10. If you're doing a 12, you're doing a 12. But you do what works for you, not trying to compare yourself.
I think that's
to
a
others.
really hard thing for a lot of people. Just not comparing, even lifting. Like, people see somebody in the gym and they're like, I should be able to do that, right? And that, that's cool, but if you're not there, you're not there. And that's how you get injured. You're forcing a weight that maybe you're not quite ready for. And while that person can do that really well, just like we mentioned with the running, you're going to end up hurting yourself you might do it, but you might pay for it.
Yeah. I mean, Ben tells me there's some people, you come in after my class and be kind of like, hey, what did Joe do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did Joe do? And so, granted, now one of them was part of the old 530 group, but it was kind of that comparison. But you can't. Again, I look up at the board and it's like, one time I did the 450 on the deadlift, but now somebody asked me one of the last challenges we did, hey, did you do that? I'm like, no, because it didn't fit what I was trying to do at that time in terms of my training plan. It made no sense, so I'm not going to go do that and affect what I'm trying to do. My goals and priorities are different.
But then in reality, if someone's brand new, they have, this is their fitness. It's great because it gives them an indicator, right? Well, let's see where you're at, and then 6 months from now, you're able to compare. Whereas we completely know, hey, you do a lot of running, you're very serious about this, and we'll tell you you should skip it, or don't sweat it, right?
Yeah.
You do probably like that we switched. I don't know if you noticed, from just kind of the max deadlift number to the strength ratio.
Yeah.
So body weight.
Way more relative.
And weight. So.
Well, and that's what I've noticed just in the 4 years at the gym is when I started there, I could definitely move a lot more heavier weights.
Yeah, but you're also now. 20 pounds heavier, right? So that's where it's so cool. I love looking at the sports. You could be like, well, powerlifter, let me move as much weight as possible. Whether I have fat or muscle, it doesn't matter. It's gonna give me more leverage. Whereas if you're a runner, well, now all of a sudden your main goal is to move your body from point A to point B. Well, basically any body fat is going to be unhelpful. So being leaner is going to be better if running is your main priority. Now it's going to hurt your max lifts, but that's where you have to balance it.
But I feel more capable.
Yeah. Well, because ultimately, and again, if this is someone's sport, that's awesome. But in the real world, in general fitness, just absolute strength is pretty does not need to be prioritized. Because think about it, in the real world, if something was 400 pounds, like right there, you wouldn't go try to pick it up by yourself. You would ask us to help you.
Exactly.
Right? So, yes, a certain level of top end strength is good.
Yeah, it's going to help you.
But beyond that, it's just diminishing returns.
Yeah.
You know? Now, but then that's where, if that's your sport, cool. Just like with running, right? Yeah, most people, if they can run a mile really, or definitely, they're physically capable to go run 1 to 3 miles. That's going to be
that's
awesome.
great.
Anything beyond that is diminishing returns.
Yeah.
But if it's your sport, then then you know that, and then you're doing that for the love of the sport and for the competitive spirit and for mental reasons, and that's awesome and great.
And that's, you hit on the mental reasons. I mean, that's where I've evolved with running too. So running for me it's a passion. It's not a, hey, I'm training because I want to be, on the podium, whatever, or these different races and stuff. It's an outlet for me.
Yeah.
When I go running, I mean, I've got to go in the woods.
I know. I always see his post in the woods.
I
they're
go hardwood
out.
mills. I literally get lost in the woods.
Mhm.
I get on those fire roads and I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. Let me go see where this takes me.
Yeah.
And a few times I've had to pull out my cell phone to kind of go,
Where am I at?
where am I at? And how do I get back to, the parking lot,
Yeah.
whatever. But just being surrounded by nature, being, listening to the birds and the sun as it's rising and the sun rays are coming streaming through the trees. It's just
Different, man.
Yeah, it's what makes you feel alive. It energizes you. It makes you, and not only are you just out there in the woods, but you're physically moving. You're with nature.
I mean, there's something to it,
And so that's the other piece for me about running is it's a passion, but it's also, it gives me freedom too, so I go places and do things, or, I love getting lost when I'm running, because now all of a sudden I find places and things that never knew existed or would have never gone and seen because my legs. And one of the things that I do a lot of times is like, okay, I'm going out for a 8-10 mile run. Next thing I know, it's a 12-mile run because I went
You just
kind of
got
like a squirrel. Yeah, I'm like
Yeah.
a squirrel. Ooh, there's a nut. You take off and you go, oh, this is really interesting over here, this neighborhood or whatever else. And next thing you know, you're like, oh crap, I was only going to go 10 miles and now it's going to be 12 or something. So it also sometimes just forces you to go longer.
So I know you do some work with like Point 2 running.
Yep.
There's a local running store. What for someone like listening, because then too, like, it's probably not the best idea just to go pick up some Nikes and throw them on and then go run 10 miles.
You go to Dick's and buy, hey, what's the cheapest pair of running shoes you have?
Yeah. What's some of the gear that you found over the years, and I guess in general, like a starter kit, right? If someone's like, I really, like the idea of this community and this sport, and I want to get into it. So from a physical standpoint, and then also like gear and everything, how would you start?
So you mentioned Point 2. So Point 2 Running Company here in Newport News, and they've got a store now over in Chesapeake. They've got some awesome employees in there, passionate about running. They're all runners, anything from ultra marathon runners down to just the standard 5Ks.
Yeah.
And they've got a great program in there. When you go in, they've got a system in there where they can look at your arches, they look at your feet, they look at the way you walk, and then based on that and do their gait analysis of you, they can go, this is kind of the better shoe for you that would work best for your gait and your style or your distances and things like that. And you can try the different shoes on, and they've got a variety of shoes. I think they used to have like a runner starter pack, whatever, where for X number of dollars you get shorts, t-shirt, shoes. I'm not sure if they still do that or not, but they're very passionate in there about running. They love helping people get into the sport, and they've got loyalty program and everything else. They've got military discount. If you're a member of the Peninsula Track Club, you get a discount in there too. So, and they've got pretty much everything that can support you, from nutrition to the gear to, if they don't have it, they can either get it on the Newport News, they can transfer between stores or just order it for you. So it's a great place to go in. They've got a lot of resources in there too about locations to run, group runs, other races and things like that. So it's a great running.
Yeah.
Running
If you
store.
want to get into running, I would always try to find a specialty store,
Yes.
in your area. Like in the Hampton Roads area, Point 2, because like you said, I mean, really, you just can't, to be able to like have your gait analyzed and then a shoe picked out for you, that's going to save you a lot of trouble
Yeah.
from the
Oh,
from
yeah.
the start. So
And they carry all wide variety from Hokas, which are like max cushioning, to
Mhm.
some minimalist, or years ago I got into Ultra
yeah,
running shoes,
yeah, those
which
are great
is
because they have a wider toe box,
wider
zero
toe box,
drop.
zero drop. For those that don't know what we're talking about, like with zero drop, it's from your forefoot to your heel, how much the shoe elevates.
Mm-hmm.
I used to run, it's almost like a 12. My
Mhm.
knees would bother me. I eventually got into ultras. My knees don't bother me anymore. So I want to say it's because of the drop, but the shoes just, it feels comfortable. So,
Yeah,
so that was one piece, was just trail shoes, street running shoes. It's all for me. It's
Mhm.
ultra is what
nice.
works for me.
Where would you start if someone's like, well, I hear y'all, with the nuances of running and not overdoing it, as far as a training program or something simple, like, whether it maybe couch to 5K, like what would you recommend as a starting point so that they have some kind of structure?
So what worked for me was actually Jeff Galloway. He's got some
Mhm.
training programs, and what I liked about his when I trained for my first marathon was, unlike some other marathon training plans, he literally only has you run like 3 or 4 times a week.
Mhm.
That's it. Even for a marathon,
Yeah.
he 3 or 4 times, and then he combines the run walk. So like as a
Yep.
beginner, you're not trying to go out and run 5, 6, 7
Yeah.
days a week. You're running only a couple of days. It's shorter distances. You're running, walking, so
Yeah.
you're not
So
just
it's actually helping
constantly.
develop that mindset
Yeah.
of not an all or nothing approach, of some balance.
Yeah. And so, like for a marathon, but he's got him at the training plans for 5K out to marathon.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, but my first exposure was a marathon training plan. Again, I loved it because it was like a Tuesday, Thursday run, 30 minutes to 45 minutes. Not necessarily, go run 5 miles, but it was a time thing. And
Yeah.
then on the weekends, he had you do your long run. The other nice thing about his training plans too is a lot of them are like 16 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
His is more like, I say 26. So
Yeah.
what he does is he starts you out farther back
Yeah.
and has you more gradually build
Ease
up
into it big
versus
time.
just jumping into it.
I like that a lot.
And so, he's, I don't know, he's got statistics, whatever, to show that people that follow his training program, or at least this is his tagline, is
Yeah.
that fewer injuries because you
Well, yeah, you
take
build it up slower.
slower time to build up. What's kind of ironic is on the one that I did, which was cross the finish line standing up, his last long run was 26 miles. And so when I completed that 26 miles, I was like, that's only 2 more tenths of a mile and I would have completed my marathon.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But that's what he does. But every other weekend, he pulls you back. So he pulls you back to like 6 or 8 miles.
Yeah.
And then the
So
next
like a little
weekend,
deload
adds,
almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
2 miles farther that following weekend. And so to me, that's what, has worked for me to get me across the finish lines is Jeff Galloway between the run, walk. And it does, after a while, you're kind of like, oh man, I've been out here for a long time doing this training, but you really do come through it with less injuries because you're not going so intense in a shorter period of time. It's spread out. So
Yeah.
somebody trying to get into the sport of running or slowly get in there, following a Galloway training plan, especially if you're trying to go for your first 5K or 10K or something,
Mm-hmm.
it will give you much more gradual, easier into the sport and into what you're trying to
Yeah.
accomplish than trying to just go all
No,
in.
I like that a lot.
And then, like you said, and then if you avoid catastrophic injuries, you're gonna probably stick, right? Because you don't have that. Then you don't have the time off that an injury
And
may
the up and
force.
down that an injury gives you. That's tough to work through.
Starting over again.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, Joe, I think I know I learned a lot, and I just love hearing guys like you are always an inspiration to me.
Yes.
That's one selfish benefit as being a trainer since I was 20 is I get to learn from people, wiser and older than me and where I want to be. And so, I appreciate seeing the action you take and how you, do things.
No, I appreciate you having me on and let me talk about something that over time I've become passionate about, and just again talking about systems and with Coastal. I've been at Coastal now for 4 years. The different pieces and parts. It's not just coming to Coastal for that gym class on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and just doing that. It's all the parts and pieces that encompass the whole thing. And some of it you're not really paying for or anything, but it's just those tangible,
You pick them up along the
intangible
way.
things like the podcast or being part of that group at 4:30 in the morning, where you want to be there because of the other people that are there and the friends that you've made, and you're all kind of encouraging each other, and yoga and all just the community spirit of part of Coastal and everything else. And so it's a whole piece that you start pulling in parts and pieces and things, and then you create the system, and 2-4 years down the road you go, wow, I never.
Yeah, this is my lifestyle.
Yeah, but it's not something that you said, okay, as of today, in 4 years from today, this is exactly where I'm going to be. You pick up
you
these
evolve
things,
there slowly.
You incorporate those things, and 4 years later, you're like, wow, I didn't realize, I never expected to be in the place where I am. And again, it's the Coastal and the gym is kind of the foundation, but everything else built around it as a system of pieces and parts that support all the things that you're trying to do. So I'm really appreciative of it, and the coaches and everything else, and just the constant encouragement. And it's great. I really enjoy it, and it's made a huge impact in my life.
Yeah, that's why we do it. That's what we love to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if someone's interested in kind of keeping up with your runnings and races, like you're on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Is it
Joe Cool Runner.
Joe Cool Runner.
Kids love to call me Joe Cool, and then one day I was starting the Instagram thing. They're like, "Oh, you got to be Joe Cool Runner." I'm like, "Okay."
I mean, why
good.
not? Yeah, that's perfect.
Writes itself.
And we didn't even talk about gardening.
I know.
Maybe that's another
one.
podcast.
I know. I looked at the time and I was like thinking, because the angle with the gardening too I wanted to get into was, people are like, well, this guy works out and runs, but look, you need to. We talk about all the time. You need to find hobbies that are more parasympathetic.
Yes.
Kind of help you chill out, zen out, and you're really into the gardening, which does just that, right?
Oh,
so, but we'll have to get into. We can maybe take a nutrition angle with that.
Yeah.
I think hey, we could have you on again for sure. This is a good time.
Yeah. But all right, I hope you enjoyed it if you're listening. And again, reach out to Joe if you have any questions, or also if you're interested in the sport of running and getting into it, and you're in the local area. Point 2 Running's a great resource.
Pay him a visit.
4:30 a.m. class, man. That's the
4:30 a.m.
Come at 4:30 with Joe. He'll be there.
A special group there.
That is,
Will and I, unfortunately, are not part of that.
We are not part of the group. Not a chance.
But all right, enjoy.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
We'll catch you next time. As always, thanks for listening, guys. If you want to learn more, check us out at coastalfitnessva.com or garydeagle.com. We'll see you next time.